the way that I'm using images and drawing goes right back to the much more original idea, or the more basic idea of what drawing really is. Man making an image in the world, or making some connection between man and the world that he lives in.
Keith Haring was an incredibly influential late 20th century artist. He really came to prominence in New York in the 1980s. And from then on, for over a pretty small amount of time, he had this crazy rise to fame. You know, he started out making works on the streets and in the subways of New York, and then he was represented by very influential collectors and gallerists, and then he was having, you know, major survey shows across the globe. Haring made a huge number of public works, including this one behind me. Just a few days after arriving here in Melbourne, he visited the water wall, came back a few days later with no grids, no preparations, nothing. And at no point during the painting process did he step back and even look at how things were coming together. He created this incredibly intricate and interwoven composition, which Haring is quite renowned for for letting the viewer take what they want from his works. But he sort of quite broadly made comments about the work relating to themes like life and death and love and hate, kind of, you know, universal experiences that we all have. I mean, in addition to obviously addressing a lot of his personal experiences living with HIV and eventually passing away from AIDS-related complications, Haring was very much invested in campaigning against the AIDS epidemic of the time, and he created a number of artworks that actually became inspiration for posters which he would hand out in the thousands in the streets of New York, particularly at ACT UP rallies and related events for the LGBTQIQ community. Yeah. Keith Haring visited Australia only once during his career, and it was in February and March of 1984.
It has so much in common with art of other cultures. I mean, when I come here and I see all these Aboriginal drawings, and it looks like things I've been drawing.
He wanted to make things with a very straightforward message that everyone could understand, non-art people, children. He basically wanted to make art for everyone, so making art in public spaces outside of those gallery walls was a really key objective for him. I mean, you know, a lot of people in Melbourne still to this day definitely are incredibly influenced by Keith Haring's work, and that, you know, that is really the impetus for staging a reinterpretation of the original mural 35 years on. It was the first work to ever appear on the NGV's water wall, Haring's own first painting on glass, and the largest scale that he had ever worked on at that point. So it was a very unique work for many different reasons. So I think what I've really taken away from this show and this mural is the intersection between Haring's work and his activism and his community engagement. I think he was such a singular and unique artist in that way, because he had this intentionality behind his work. He wasn't necessarily interested in the money and the fame. He was really interested in just making sure that he could continue to reach as many people as possible and really paint what he believed in, I think. You know, he was such a socially engaged artist. He was an incredibly brave, you know, openly gay artist living in the 1980s. And I think he just embraced every part of himself, embraced every part of his community. He wanted to make him art through his art and really call out the inequalities and injustices within society, many of which still exist today. And I think that's why the work of Haring and Basquiat is still so beloved and still so appreciated by today's audiences, whether they be people who, you know, were growing up with Haring and Basquiat, or whether it be, younger audiences today. It's quite incredible the reach that both artists continue to have.